Hello everyone and welcome to our Lane 4 webinar on adaptability, the key skill for the next decade and beyond. So just before we start, please, I just want to say please send through your thoughts, questions as we go along, and Chris and I will hopefully be able to get back to you on some of those, but also just make sure that your messages go through to all panelists so that we can see them as we go through. So let's start. So I thought, what better place to start than to introduce myself. So my name's Thomas Hacker. I am a research executive here at Lane 4, and I thought a great intro would be to tell you about why I'm so fascinated in the topic of adaptability. And I'm so personally interested because I'm fascinated about how the world works and how this impacts human psychology. And what I've learned is that adaptability is a hugely influential factor behind life as we know it. So fundamentally, the species that have survived are not only the strongest or the fastest, but they are the most adapted to their environment. And I know this, evolutionary explanation isn't something that I carry around with me day to day, but I think it's a great life lesson that, to develop people and our performance, we need to learn to deal with the challenges and changes in work and in life. So that's me. It's a pleasure for me to be joined also today by Chris.
Hi everyone, I'm Chris Hempsall. My role at Lane 4, I guess, is dual focus. So firstly, I work with a number of our clients building long-term partnerships to improve sustainable performance over the long term. And secondly, I lead our proposition around scalable learning solutions. I'm also a business psychologist, and so my interest in adaptability has always been there, actually, and having coached and developed a number of leaders and people around transitions, moving into new jobs, moving into new roles with new demands, and actually recognising the pace of change at the moment. How are people thriving and adapting to that? So adaptability is a hot topic at the moment. LinkedIn Learning signposted it as one of the top 5 skills for 2020. So delighted to be talking to you today. And with that in mind, the objectives of this webinar, what Thomas and I will talk you through and share with you, is some of our latest research on the future of work, and adding to that, what are those critical skills that leaders and employees need to be really successful over the next decade, and with the pace of change seemingly accelerating. And then finally, some top tips around how to develop adaptability in your organisation and yourselves, as well as really understanding what it actually is and what our position on that is as well. So, Thomas, do you want to kick us off with sharing back some of the research?
We'd love to. Thank you, Chris. So, I thought the most logical place to start is actually, why is adaptability such an important skill? The biggest indicators we got for this question came from extensive research that we did into our future working environment. And so there's a couple of things we did. So first, we investigated the macroeconomic trends that are impacting the way that we live, we work, and the way that we lead our businesses. And we also, within this working environment, we wanted to ask leaders directly, what are the skills that you need to be most successful in this environment? So I thought, let's start with the trends. And what our research indicates is that it's not only globalization or the threat of technology, but it is the combination and accumulation of 14 macroeconomic megatrends that, like I said, are impacting the way we work, live, and lead our organizations. And leaders are required to adapt because the changing working environment has never been so fast or has never been so complicated. And I must stress, these trends aren't just about the future. These aren't 20, 30 years in the future. They're all impacting the way that we work and live, all at the same time and all right now, and will also continue to do so in the future. So really, it's no good just looking at one trend at a time. We need to pay attention to all of them if we want to sustain and improve performance over time. I say that we need to focus on all of them, and now I'm going to contradict myself a little bit if I go, we've only got enough time to look at a couple. But we wanted to pick two that we could focus on. Actually, how is that impacting an organization's or an individual's need to be adaptable? So if we take a look at the increasing scarcity of natural resources, so the environment and the scarcity of natural resources has become a daily news story. Big questions have been asked about, or have been asked of politicians, our economic systems, the way businesses are run. And this has become such a global issue because by 2030, the world's population is forecast to expand from 7.5 billion to 8.5. And by 2050, that's been forecasted to rise to 9.7 as well. So that's just like adding another India and China to the planet as we know it. So with this comes an increased demand for natural resources, and if we don't change, increase carbon consumption. And just to add to this, we're already using 70% more resources than the Earth can replenish on a yearly basis.
And I think what I'm noticing in terms of how that's impacting organisations, I think it's probably twofold really. One is it seems to be creating a bit of an activist mindset, in everyone, not just in organisations, where people are really wanting to change. And you only need to look at David Attenborough and Greta Thunberg. That's a very powerful combination for creating that activist mindset. But actually, organisations responding to that with some pretty ambitious pledges around being carbon neutral or reducing their carbon footprint. And I think where that plays out is those pledges aren't just words on a page. Actually, every level of the organisation is going to be affected by that, whether that be process changes, technology changes, supply chain changes, and it's not just changing those policies. It's actually requiring a mindset and behaviour shift within people in organisations, because those good intentions are nothing without people adapting to those changes as they start to take shape.
Yeah, so it's not just we're adapting to the changing environment from that organizational level. Actually, when we do that, this is actually going to have an impact throughout the whole of our organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we looked at one there that looks at let's say an organization's need to be adaptable. Now I want to take a look at one of the macroeconomic trends that's impacting individuals, say within teams. So in recent years, we've seen a rise in tensions between world powers and populist politics. So, for example, we've seen trade wars between the US and China, or in Europe, actually, 1 in 4 voters supported an authoritarian populist party the last time they voted in a national election. And I can see why it might be tempting to argue that politics has always been volatile, but new research shows that people's rising use in social media has actually exacerbated political tensions within society. And I'd also say it's quite easy to think that political tensions, political division within society is something that happens, between countries, between people, between friends even. But that doesn't happen in the workplace. But new research shows that it is actually impacting the workplace. So almost 1 in 2 workers have said that they've had a political disagreement with a colleague. And you can see the stat here as well. 1 in 5 people have had an argument about Brexit with a colleague in the last year. And I think this is because of conversations have become more divided, more emotional and more hostile.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly resonate with that myself. I've had a few interesting conversations with colleagues and my family about that topic. But I think, those mega trends, I think that's really interesting context. And what it does to me is it reinforces that we're operating in an ever-changing work environment, and those mega trends are really capturing those. I mean, if you're interested in finding out more about those, we've got a white paper on that and some of the implications for leaders and people in organisations. So have a look on our website for that. But with that changing context, Thomas, what does that mean around the key skills that people need to thrive in this changing context?
Well, yeah, exactly. So I mentioned up front that this is another key indicator of why adaptability is so important and a big part of this research. So we went out and asked leaders what are the top 10 skills that you need to be most successful for the future. And this is what we found. So it's not just that the environment's changing, and that being a big reason for why organizations need to be adaptable. Actually, leaders are recognizing it in themselves. So leaders recognised that adaptability was in the top 10 skills they needed to be successful in the future.
And that seems to resonate with a number of other articles, items that we've seen around what those top skills are for the next decade, but certainly with a focus in 2020. And actually, it really resonates with me with what I'm hearing in our clients and what our clients are telling us, particularly around the adaptability side of things. These are some of the things I hear in meetings and conversations with some of our clients. And I guess theming those into three main areas. The first one is all about keeping up with and thriving with the ever increasing pace of change. So, many clients I work with are either going through a digital transformation, introducing new technologies, new systems, organizational restructures to drive some of those changes. There's automation of jobs and lots of statistics around the amount of jobs that AI will ultimately be taking over. So what that's leading to is this need to kind of survive and thrive with the pace of change. The second theme is probably around just maintaining performance as those demands or roles change. So whether that's the need to onboard graduates or new starters quicker into an organisation so they can perform quicker, or actually, when new demands are faced by leaders and people, how they quickly adapt to those to drive performance, not just adapt and be okay, but drive some of that performance. So it's seemingly the sort of classic 90 days, first 90 days, the need to perform quicker and accelerate is becoming more and more, really. And I'd say the third theme that I'm noticing is around how organisations are wanting to create a learning culture. I guess we're recognising all these changes around us. How do there's a desire for organisations to want people to own their own development, own their own career development, own their own personal development. And actually, we provide organisations. I'm sure you're providing your people with lots of digital resources, digital learning materials. But are people really engaging with them? Do people know how to learn? Are they getting the most out of that? And how do we help people really engage with that learning and develop that learning mindset, if you like?
Definitely, and I can see like you're saying about the pace of change as well. How that's really difficult.
Yes.
When the pressure is ramped up, we need to do things quicker, we need to do things faster.
Absolutely, and just that need to adapt fast and and adapt well, I think, is becoming increasingly important. So those are some of the things we're hearing. I mean, it'd be good to do a bit of a poll now and get your input on this. So what changes do people need to adapt to most within your business? And if you just jot down some of your answers or your comments in the chat box at the bottom right of the screen, we'll have a look what's coming through and we'll respond to some of that.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and just a reminder to send those all through to all panelists as well. And yeah, actually, Chris, I can see a few coming through already. So we've got a few here about changes in your organisation, so new technology, organisational restructures.
Yes, that's good. And mindsets of growth. How do organisations work with people to changing roles, changing environments? So whether that be changing technology in organisation structure, new processes, new systems, policies, government policy. Different customer demands and changing customer demands. So there's an undertone of change in there, and as you keep firing these through, the pattern seems to be increasing. So I think if we were to respond to those, I think some of the questions I'd be asking you to think about is, what are the new skills that people need to learn? So if it's a systems change or technology change, there's going to be some real hard skills that people need to learn, or things that they'll need to do differently, ways of working. But actually, it's not just the hard skills. Are you giving people the time to learn those? And actually, are you helping people let go of some of the things that have happened that they've done in the past? Because a lot of work that I've done personally and our researchers around transitions into new roles is not just about layering on new skills and new activities and doing things differently. Actually, to be effective, you also need to let go of certain things that may have worked for you well in the past, but might not be working so well now. So are you giving people the time and the space and the conversations to, to think about what they need to let go of and recognize that? And are we helping people learn fast and learn from mistakes? Because you know what, it probably isn't going to be right first time, and that's a real paradox, isn't it? Wanting to perform and get things going, and recognizing people need time to learn. So how do you create that feedback loop? How do you create that culture where, where mistakes, perhaps, how do we learn from those mistakes? So rather than just punishing those mistakes, how do we sort of learn from those mistakes and fail fast and learn quickly and adapt?
Yeah, I think what's standing out for me there is like recognition, and actually that isn't an easy process either. It's difficult, but it can be done. Especially when you're talking about letting go. I can see how that would be really difficult if you become an expert in a certain area, and you need to adapt and change in order to develop.
Absolutely, that's great. And please keep pushing those questions through or those comments through. But moving on, so we know adaptability is really critical, but what exactly is it, and how do we develop it, then, Thomas?
Good question, Chris. So I thought we'd start by getting into how would we define adaptability. So at Lane 4, we define it as the ability to learn, transfer skills, make adjustments, and create new strategies during times of transition or challenge. And this is all underpinned by a willingness to respond to change. And our Lane 4 empirical research found that many organizations focus on developing capability and skills, but actually this isn't enough. We found that the biggest challenge employees anticipate when developing in their career is being able to learn and adapt to changes at work. And our research identified 8 factors that underpin adaptability, as you can see here. And some may seem more obvious to you, and maybe others not. And so what we wanted to do was to focus on a couple that aren't focused on as much. So the first one I want to take a look at is practicing for improvement. And I wanted to talk about practicing for improvement because really interestingly, from our adaptability diagnostic, we found that this component of adaptability was the lowest scoring factor. So this was the thing that people were struggling with most. And I find that really interesting, but also quite understandable from my personal experience. So like in my role within research, I'm always looking to learn the new thing or find the new insight, and then move on to the next thing and consuming all this knowledge. But actually, although practicing for improvement might not be the most exciting thing, actually it's critical for making sure that learning sticks, and I embed that learning as well.
And I see some of that data, because actually what we also notice is some of the highest scoring items there around driving for success. So this willingness to give things a go and try things out and want to improve. But actually, with one of the lowest scoring being practicing for improvement, what you see is lots of initiatives, but then actually is there follow through on some of those things, and are people really committing to it? And I'm sure this links very closely to New Year's resolutions and habit forming as well. And I'm sure there are a few people on here who may have taken up a new gym membership at the start of the year with all good intentions, and I've been there myself. And then it easily wanes without the bedding it in and turning it into a new habit.
Exactly, and I think one of the reasons why learning doesn't stick or isn't as embedded as we hope it would be is that we often don't spend enough time linking our goals, so going to the gym, say 4 times a week, to actually what's important to us. What do we value? Who is the kind of person that we want to be? So using your gym example there, I think it's quite clear there will always be moments where we want to give up, or we feel like this isn't me, this isn't the person who I am going to the gym. But actually, to help create commitments, it's really key to link that commitment to practice to our values. So valuing health, or a more inspirational goal, like I want to spend more time with my children at the weekend and play.
Great stuff. So moving on to another factor, one that I see quite a lot actually, is around believing in yourself. which actually is all about self-belief, and self-belief being one of the foundations of adaptability. And when people believe in themselves, they try new things, they bounce back from setbacks, they push themselves hard, performance and productivity generally increase when there is that level of self-belief. And perhaps think about yourselves. Think of a time when you felt on top of your game. How did that change your performance? Certainly for me, I know when I'm really believing in myself, it pushes me harder, and I tend to work harder, try new things, and take some risks. But then compare that to a time when perhaps you doubt yourself, or that confidence is a bit knocked. What's the impact? You're a bit more withdrawn, a bit more cautious, a bit more wary actually of really, and that's got a direct impact on performance. And I guess self-belief is relevant at all stages in life. And I've got personal experience myself with my son. Actually, my son 3 years ago, he was 8. He was really struggling at school actually, and in his junior school, and you could see and what was going on for him. He got a diagnosis of dyspraxia, but actually that wasn't the thing for him. It was more the environment that he was in, and the environment around him just wasn't really bringing the best out of him, and he was going withdrawn. He was more quiet. It wasn't as energetic as he was, and in response to that, we looked at a different school that really paid a lot of attention to actually not just creating the environment, the nurturing environment for him, but actually one that really helped him understand his emotions and where he was at, and really understanding some of the things that that helps build his belief. And I remember him coming home one day with this beautiful little laminated sheet of a tree of strength, which was a little thing that helped him put all his achievements on there, and it just was a bit of a nudge, a bit of a tool to help him build his belief. And over the last couple of years, his confidence and esteem and belief have just gone through the roof. He's 11 now. He's got his own baking business. Believe it or not, he wants to be prime minister. So again, lots of talks of Brexit there. And yes, and I think for me it shows the beauty of all of these things, belief and all the other factors of adaptability. They are all developable. And actually how you develop those within your organisation is quite fundamental, really.
Fantastic, thank you, Chris. I still need to try one of those cakes as well.
Yes, always welcome. Yeah.
So Chris ended there by saying, yes, the really exciting thing about adaptability and all the components that sit underneath it are adaptable. So I brought up this slide again because I wanted to give you a moment to reflect, to see where you're at, and I'd do that by asking a few questions. So first off, how does your organisation measure up against the components of adaptability? How adaptable are you and your team? And finally, what are you putting in place to develop adaptability for yourself, your team, across your organisation?
That's great. Some really good questions to think about there. And I want to share with you now some top tips for building an adaptable organisation. So these are some of the things that we're working with clients on as well. So I suppose firstly, thinking about how do you hire for it? Do you hire for adaptability? Many interviews and assessment processes focus a lot on capabilities and the skills or experiences that people need. But what kind of questions could you build into your process to test out adaptability? Examples of times they've had setbacks, examples of when they've embraced challenge, those kind of things. So how can you bring it into your interview process to hire for it?
Fantastic. And I'd like to link back to our research again, which said that leaders are saying it's important. They want to develop adaptability, but the question for me is it on your learning curriculum? To what extent are you giving people the tools to be adaptable and to take charge of their own career? And an example way of developing it as well, I'd like to link back to Chris and your son there with his belief tree, I think you spoke about. So, one way to develop self-belief is to reflect upon the things that are our strengths and our performance accomplishments as well. So, to what extent are people reminded of or aware of their strengths?
It's great. And the third area is around nurturing it. So actually what kind of environment have you got in your organisation where adaptability can thrive? So how do you build your culture that actually rewards adaptability, or rewards that learning, and recognises the benefits of adaptability? How equipped are your line managers in reinforcing the importance of adaptability? How do organisations learn from mistakes and learn from failures to adapt for performance, essentially?
And I'd like to build on that. So I think there's one thing, encouraging people throughout your organisation, the people that you lead, to display those behaviours, to be more adaptable. But actually, I think it's really important to ask the question: what are you going to do to develop your adaptability? So for me, it's what is the next thing you're going to do that makes you feel uncomfortable, but actually also gives you the opportunity to learn as well.
That's great. That's great. And here at Lane 4, we've got a suite of tools and learning solutions to help develop adaptability in organisations, in people and teams. A range of personalised learning tools, so self-serve, digital, on-demand tools that are available on any device. A 360 feedback tool to get multi-rater feedback on adaptability, and then more deep dive Adapt4 learning programs, either as standalone or part of a leadership program, graduate program, or as part of learning academies, all to help people become more adaptable and gear themselves up to learning, really. As an example, Adapt4 Performance is one of our tools. It's a digital tool. It provides a diagnostic to help to provide an adaptability profile. So how do you measure up against those 8 factors of adaptability, with some immediate feedback, and then some bite-sized learning modules that are recommended to you based on that profile, and then with some practical tools and practical learning to help support that. The other benefit of that is we can use the diagnostic to create aggregate profiles of adaptability for teams and for the organisation as a whole, to really help pinpoint where some of the development needs to focus on moving forward. Do get in touch and find out more, and there's more details of that on our website. So please let us know if you want to talk more.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chris. I also just wanted to mention that I've seen a few questions and a few comments as we've been going through. So please do just keep them coming, and we'll get back to you individually, because unfortunately we don't have time to go through them at the moment. But if you are interested in learning more about the megatrends that are shaping the future working environment, or interested in learning more about adaptability, then please do check out our website, where we've got articles and white papers and more. And I'd like to end by saying thank you for joining us today. I've really enjoyed that. I don't know about you, Chris.
Likewise. No, really enjoyed talking about it. Time has flown.
It has. Thank you.